Good evening, everybody. If I could please have your attention and have some silence. We are ready to start the meeting. It is 7:03 on April 12th of 2017. Before we respect our flag, I just want to let you know, typically when we do have work sessions, we have roundtable discussions below, but with the anticipated crowd tonight, we wanted to make sure as many people from the public had the opportunity to come in and have capacity seating. With that being said, I would like you to join us for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Dale, if you could, the roll call.
Council President Healy.
Here.
Councilman DeCruz.
Here.
Councilwoman Gledhill. Here. Councilman Veely.
Here.
4 members present. Council Vice President Collins is absent.
Thank you. Moving on to item 4A, which is a public hearing tonight with the school committee's participation relative to the town council's preliminary budget for 2017 and 18 as adopted on March 13th. We will address all funds contained within the preliminary budget. Steve, did you want to start or say anything before?
I guess I could start with an opening just really to try to frame where we are this evening and how we got to this point. There is a handout. If there are individuals that haven't picked it up at the door, they are being passed around. This is a warrant for the 10 different funds that the town operates. When the town adopts its budget, it adopts a budget that looks at 10 different funds. 2 of the funds that I think are of the most importance, obviously, are the general fund, which is associated with the raising of property tax, and the second fund being the school fund. The other 8 funds are associated with our utilities, with water, wastewater, solid waste. They're also associated with our debt service program for paying debt associated with municipal and school debt, as well as our recreation programs, senior programs. So all of those funds have been reviewed over the course of the last 3 months by the council. There were 4 public hearings that were conducted by the town council on each of those different funds over the course of 4 nights, and that was on March 1st, 2nd, 6th, and on the 7th with the school committee. On March 13th, the town council adopted the council's budget, where there was a small adjustment that was made in the general fund and a substantive adjustment that was made to the school fund. The school budget that had been submitted to the town council would require an appropriation of a 2% increase in property taxation. That 2% request that was submitted to the council would have required $1,027,774 worth of an increase over the base year. At the council's meeting on March 13th, the council amended the proposed budget for the preliminary budget by reducing it by 0.65% from the 2%, or they provided an overall increase of $693,739. That meant that the school committee's budget that had been submitted was now $334,018 out of balance. The council, after making that decision, which was a difficult decision that took 10 different motions to complete, indicated that they were adopting the 1.35% as a component of the preliminary budget and wished to see what the reductions would be were the school committee to adapt their budget and balance it with the $334,018 reduction. The school committee met on March 29th. At that meeting, the school committee went through a number of possible revisions to their budget as presented by the superintendent. After deliberation and review of the $334,000 in potential adjustments, the school committee determined that they were not prepared to adjust their budget, but rather wished to have additional discussion with the council. That brings us really to where we are this evening. The school committee's budget is out of balance by $334,000 with the council. The council has been advised through the PowerPoint that had been presented to the school committee on March 29th of the possible adjustments that would be made were the reduction to remain in place. That brings us to where we are tonight in terms of the out of balance. And I think that the first step in that out of balance would be for the school committee to report to the council relative to the March 29th meeting and their findings. Once that's been completed, then it would be deliberation with the council and the school committee on where they stand on that. This is also a public hearing. As such, the public has every right and interest to be here and to be able to participate. However, in advance of that, the dialogue should occur at the table to determine whether there's commonality of interest or whether there's still difference of opinion. That's the best I can do, is try to summarize where we are tonight.
Go ahead, Scott, please.
So the school committee looked, as Steve said, looked at the potential cut list, discussed it at the special budget meeting, and in the end, I made a motion which was nearly unanimously passed by the school committee, identifying that the impact of the cuts on our children were too severe, and requesting the town council to return to the question of the property tax transfer with our hope and recommendation that the figure of the property tax transfer would be returned to 2%. And I think that while there are diverse opinions on the school committee, just as there are on the town council, that was the common ground for the school committee. Often compromises are defined by the fact that nobody leaves happy. I think that there were differences, but it is our belief that we can run the school system on the 2% that was originally identified. Those cuts have already been discussed and processed. It really is the additional cuts which are devastating, particularly to the most vulnerable of our children. And so we would like to begin the conversation with the possibility of reconsidering the 1.35% in favor of a 2% tax transfer. I want to be clear that at no point has the school committee in our considerations talked about, well, wouldn't it be neat if we had 3% or 4%? It's not that we would not relish that fact, but that is not the decision we made. We made the decision that all constituencies considered and all interests of the community considered, 2% was fair and it was doable.
Any other comments from the school committee? Comments here from the council? Please go ahead.
Just to echo what Scott said, the school committee is not prepared to make the cuts that are presented at the 1.35%. We would have to go back to the committee table to even discuss doing that, and it's really our position that the cuts are unacceptable, CARES, the Family and Child Engagement Officer, guidance counselors, sports programs. These are not things that, music, yeah, these are not things that the town of South Kingstown is willing to part with. And so I just really hope the school committee can, I'm sorry, the town council can reconsider their position. 2% was already tight. We were already laying off staff more than at a rate more than was really comfortable, but we were willing to work with 2%. 1.35 is just too much.
Further comments from the school committee? I would just like to say something. I always like to speak for my constituents, and as the town council president, my phone has been ringing off the hook. I am in support of the schools. I certainly am in support of the increase for your school budget. It's not a matter of declining enrollment to me right now. It's a matter of cost of living increases, health care benefits, and educational benefits. So as your town council representative, I am an advocate for the increase to the 2%, and I will support the schools to the best of my capabilities and the programs. Especially, I see CARES representatives here, and I would not like to see programs like that being cut. They're just wonderful programs. And if you care about your children, you care about spending a little more money, and it's not going to kill your taxes. It really won't. So I'm here to support you.
I'd like to say that I don't think...
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to say that there's not one person, I think, on the council that doesn't support our schools. It's a difficult budget year. Initially, when we met with the school committee, the number that I remember was 4%, and I believe it was. But if you could do me a favor, I'm not saying that you requested it, but the presentation that was made was based off of 4%. Okay. Well, I'm not going to argue about it. I just wanted to bring that up. But if someone on the school committee could tell us what the difference between the 2% and 1.35 in reference to cuts would be?
Okay, so I think that you have access to the PowerPoint from the March 29th meeting.
Understand.
Most of those things haven't changed from our previous meeting with you guys, where we showed you what would happen at a 1% property tax transfer. So I think the council has had plenty of time to sort of understand what the consequence of a 1%.
I understand that, but I want everyone in the room to understand as well.
Okay. Kristen, can you look that up and share it with Brian?
I don't know if I'm...
First cut at it.
Sure.
When I think about the difference between a 2% cut and a 2% transfer and a 1.35% transfer, and I think about some of the programs that have been in the district, frankly, not just for years, but for decades, and programs that are uniquely targeted at our most vulnerable students. So we have a model program in SK Cares. In round numbers, 200 mentors volunteer. They come into our schools. They work with kids not for months, but for years, focusing on keeping kids in school, keeping them motivated to learn, getting them to graduation. Frankly, SK Cares is on that cut list. And I can't imagine, and it is a relatively small budget item. It makes a huge difference in terms of the quality of education and our commitment to address equity within quality education. So when I first looked at the cut list, SK Cares was probably the one that stood out for me most. The SMILE program has been around. Carol Englander has been running it for years. It's a program targeted at vulnerable students, young women, focusing on science, and really, I mean, she has created an enviable reputation and database, getting those students from early on in the school, through high school, to graduation, and on to college. And frankly, there is more matching money that is brought in by our contribution to that program. As I remember, Carol and I exchanged emails. My recollection is that if we cut this, there is, in round numbers, because I don't remember the detail of it, on the order of $30,000 that would leave our school system because of that cut. Those two programs, as well as, I mean, what seemed to me like an endless list. And the hallmark of South Kingstown public education is a commitment to quality. And we have had that commitment. Frankly, I've been on the school committee for, this is my 25th year. This is one of the things that year in and year out, whether the taxpayers were doing well or not doing well, whether the economy was good or bad, this is a town that stood for quality public education. And to make these cuts, frankly, is a stepping away from that commitment. And it is, more importantly, I mean, we have many students who, frankly, are motivated and bright, and they have family that can support them. They're going to learn without a whole lot of help. I'm most concerned about our students who struggle, because it's our job to create opportunities for them, to offer them the supports that they need in order to have a life beyond high school, maybe beyond college. The truth is, that's what South Kingstown stands for, and that's what this vote is about. Do
I agree with you.
we stand with quality?
Thank you, Scott. And as an aside from that, I personally have been involved with CARES. I started 20 plus years ago or more as a mentor, and I'm still involved with CARES today. And I'm getting emotional, but to see a program like that be cut, it's a detriment. We can't do that. We truthfully can't do that. We need to help these kids. I'm passionate about these programs. I really am. Raisa?
I can't, is the microphone on? I'm going to back up to Bryant's concern that we originally asked for 4%, because back in December, there was confusion amongst council members about what exactly a pro forma is. So I'm, in as simple terms as possible, can one expert explain again what a pro forma is? Because we presented to the town council 0, 1, 2, and 4. Is that right? 3 and 4. 0 to 4. And I think, again, there was confusion that the pro forma budget was what we were asking for. So I asked for a number. Right. So I think it would be helpful if we could just quickly explain that again, because we didn't come in and ask for 4%.
Oh, Raisa, when Bryant said that, I understood that the pro forma wasn't a request for 4%, but the budget that was presented was over 4%. So it was, she would have to, because it was a pro forma, it wasn't the final presentation. So I think that that's
the
where where the
confusion.
confusion
Pro forma
comes from.
is not a budget.
Right.
It's a, yeah.
It would just be as if we were to run our programs the same as they had been without any eliminations. It would have been, I think, even close to 5%, but nobody here was thinking that was appropriate to ask for.
You're asking for an explanation. I'm never short or simple. I think the easiest way to explain it as a performer is the first time somebody looks at a program, and if everything that you wanted in a program was going to occur in the program within reason, what would it cost you? When the school department started this year, they came up with a budget that they estimated was going to cost substantially more than the 4%. In fact, it was about $630,000 over on that pro forma. When the council met with the school committee in December, the council was concerned as to how much additional dollars were going to be provided based on the reduction in students that was continuing. And the council was concerned and said, you can't start at a pro forma number and say that everything from that pro forma number is a cut, because it isn't a cut. There's a recognition that all budgets need to be balanced and that you need to look at not just the expenditure statement, which the pro forma looks at, but also the revenue statement. And the revenue statement usually has to be very conservative, while the expenditure statement is relatively expensive. So you are always going to start out with a pro forma out of balance. The key is to find where the balancing point is, where you can meet what your program necessities are and at the same time generate the revenues that are necessary. So I think there may have been confusion, but the slide that the school committee presented started with a 4% pro forma that was still out of balance by $630,000. So each time it was suggested that the budget needed to be cut, it was from the pro forma first number. So I think we need to get away from that and get back to the point that the true budget that the school committee asked for is the one that was presented and adopted at the 2% level, and that the true number that the council is at this point is $334,000 out of balance. That's the difference.
Thank you.
That's as short as I can get it.
Any more discussion at the school committee? It's hard, I can't see you guys.
I'll just make a couple of comments. I recently watched an interview with Ken Wagner, who's the director of the Rhode Island Department of Education. And some of Ken's comments were that the challenges are not in your workforce, the challenge is in your leadership. Dr. Wagner also said there's no evidence that more money produces better results. The answer is not more money, were his words. And he said you need to challenge your leadership. If you take the average cost per pupil in the state of Rhode Island, our town spends $2,000 more per pupil. Other communities are figuring this out. And these are similar communities to ours. North Kingstown and Portsmouth are $2,000 less per student. Other communities are figuring this out. I think the leadership, the administration needs to be challenged to figure out how to get that cost per pupil down. Now, Scott, in response to you, the two programs that you referred to, I think, come to round numbers about 40,000, and it's a little bit hard to swallow that in a $60 million budget, those two, and I don't really want to go line by line with you tonight. I mean, I will, but I don't think anybody wants to do that. But it's a little hard to realize that $40,000 couldn't be found somewhere else that wouldn't lose $30,000 in matching funds. So, in respect to the taxpayer, as I said, other communities, if our average cost per pupil were the same as North Kingstown, our budget would be $6 million less. We wouldn't be having this discussion.
I respectfully agree with you, Joe, on the cost of the per pupil, but you also have to look at these other cities and towns and how many schools they have, because that also weighs into the cost per pupil. And if you look at North Kingstown, I'm not quite sure how many schools they have, but they don't have as many as we do, and Portsmouth certainly doesn't, nor does Narragansett. And the cost of facilities also weighs into the cost of educational expenses and benefits for our children. So do I want to pay more money? I'm a taxpayer too. I don't have children in the school. My children are grown. But am I willing to pay that burden to make sure our kids are well educated? You got my vote every day.
And just to finish, I love kids. I want these kids to have a quality education. This isn't, don't interpret my comments as mean-spirited. We all want the same goal. We all want the same goal. No, I wouldn't refer to you, Meg. We all want the same goal.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm glad that you brought up the Commissioner of Education. One of the reasons, or actually the former Commissioner of Education, Deborah Gist, actually directed the town council, or directed the South Kingstown Town Council, in a sense, to lean more on their property taxes to pay for our schools. She cut the funding to our district. It's been, this year, it's about $500,000 less from last year, and every year we've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in funding from the state of Rhode Island. And the reason was South Kingstown can afford to invest in public education more than it has. And exactly when that happened, maybe like 9 years ago, since that time, the school district has either been level funded or has received a nominal increase. I think there was one point where we got 2%, which was great, but I think that point needs to be made. And the other thing is, right now, if you look at neighboring communities, North Kingstown, Narragansett, Charahoe, they're asking for considerably more funds than us. We're asking for 2%. North Kingstown just asked for 3.9% of property tax transfer. And a 3.9% increase, yes, in a property tax transfer. I think Charahoe is approaching 4, Narragansett might have been 3 or something like that. And they are, their town council has approved it. And South Kingstown pays an extraordinary amount of money in transportation costs because of the size of our town, and having to get students from different points of South Kingstown is costly. So the other point I wanted to make is that I recently heard from Gina. I was at a seminar type thing on Saturday, and someone asked, how much is the budget increasing at the state level for schools? And the answer was 3%, and enrollment is going down across Rhode Island, and yet the state is increasing its budget by at least 3% every year. So I don't think it's outrageous that we are asking for 2, really.
Myrna?
And to sort of piggyback on that thought and the thoughts that have been expressed, I think the greater question is, what sort of town are we going to be for the next 20 to 30 years? Are we going to attract regeneration of population and more students to the system? Or are we going to be a retirement seaside community? Right? And these investment decisions in the schools impact that, right? And reflect what the values of the town are.
Michelle?
I think in comparing us to the town of North Kingstown, as far as the school budget pointed out, as Ms. Collins said, they have just voted a 3.9%.
Michelle, could you just speak into the mic?
Sorry, a 3.9% increase in the property tax transfer to the schools. But in addition to that, if we're comparing ourselves to North Kingstown, in the current fiscal year, North Kingstown stands to lose approximately $150,000 in state aid in this current fiscal year. Over the last 4 years, North Kingstown has lost a total of $300,000 in 4 years. This fiscal year, We, as a town of South Kingstown, stand to lose $475,000. In 4 years, North Kingstown has only lost $300,000 in state aid. We stand to lose $475,000 this year alone.
I want to agree with something that Joe said. I don't think anybody here doesn't like kids. That's not the question that we're dealing with. I think that you don't serve on the town council, and frankly, you don't serve on the school committee without a commitment to the town and without a desire to do what's best for the people in South Kingstown. However, I really think that while we share the common commitment to South Kingstown and to the children of South Kingstown, we have very different ideas about how best to serve them. So the town council, I think, with some legitimacy said, suppose we gave you less money, what would you do? Now that is not, frankly, in the domain of the town council. The decisions about the expenditure of dollars are in the domain of the school committee, but the transfer, the aggregate transfer of money, is in the domain of the town council, and only in their domain. So the school committee, with due diligence, answered the question. You wanted to know if we ended up having a tax transfer of 1.35% and we needed to cut more, where would we cut? And we've been very specific about that. We haven't been, well, we're going to work it out later. We have said this is a cut and this is a cut and this is a cut. What Joe suggests is that he would like other programs to get cut, and I'm confident that everybody has favorites and everybody thinks that they have the definitive answer about what needs to be cut. That's true on the school committee. We have differences about that, and we have to work them out. But here, there's no ambiguity about the answer that we've given you. Now the question is, are you willing to make those cuts? Do those seem like the good cuts that will be the best things for our children? We are aghast at those cuts. That's why, rather than voting to further cut the budget, we voted with near unanimity to come back and say, please take another look at this. Look at what we have put on the table as the way to make up that deficit, because we're not allowed to have an unbalanced budget. You asked the question has been answered. We think to push us to make those cuts is a mistake for the families and children in South Kingstown. But you got the data.
Thank you, Scott. Any other comments from the school committee? Any comments here at the table?
I think that I think everybody's made some good points, and I don't think, like Bryant said, there's anybody here that's going to say we want to cut CARES, that we want to cut the SMILES program. I think that everyone here has an investment. If I'm not wrong, I think everybody's had a kid in South Kingstown School at some point, and I will shortly have children in the South Kingstown school system as well. So we are all invested, and we're all here because we want good things for our constituents, for our residents that have children in the schools that don't. I think I agree with some of the points Joe made. I do disagree with the measure of per pupil expenditure. I think in a state as small as we are, that's a difficult way to measure the success of our districts and what it means to our students. I think that number more represents, from a community standpoint, what's our education worth to our kids. And I think more communities would be in a better place if that's how they looked at that, rather than comparing themselves to neighbors and said, well, what's our personal value that we're placing here? Because ultimately that's where it comes from. I do take concern with how this sort of shifts this conversation. The school committee and the town council have to come together to decide how much money we're going to spend. The power that the town council has is how much we're willing to give for the school budget. We can't decide how that money's ever spent. We can't say it's going to go here, it has to go there, we want this teacher saved or that teacher saved. That's not up to us. Those programs aren't up to us. So it's frustrating on both sides because they're at our mercy with how much money we're going to give, and we're at their mercy with how they spend it. So I think having this productive back and forth in this conversation is important because it starts to be community members pitting against each other. Who loves this program? Who loves that program? And really it should be about what kind of education do we want to provide our kids as a whole, and how can we approach it from that direction? The vote that we did on the 16th was preliminary. This is why we're having these meetings. This is why we're having those discussions. Nothing is final yet. And frankly, I want to hear from the people who came here tonight and what their opinions are, because we've got time before we vote on this, and we don't know which direction it's going to go in. Frankly, we don't know what's going to happen next year with the new education secretary and how our funds are going to be directed. We have to prepare ourselves for anything. So I just caution everybody to look at the here and now and what's happening and what we can do that's best tonight and right now for the students.
Any further discussion? If there's no further discussion, the audience is welcome to come up and speak, but based on the number of people that are here, I'm going to ask you, if you wish to come up and speak, to state your name at the podium, and I'd like you to keep your comments under 2 minutes. So if anybody would like to come up and talk, we certainly would like to hear from you.
Good evening. My name is Emily Comiskey. I feel like I've been seeing a lot of all of you lately. I'm a parent of 4 children, ages 5 through 10, a taxpayer, and a college professor. For the last 8 years, I have been volunteering at South Kingstown Inclusionary Preschool, Wakefield, and Broad Rock schools as part of CARES and as a board member for the PTO. Over the years, understanding the plight and the needs of our faculty and students, I have worked tirelessly to supplement the gaps in funding provided to the schools. I realize every year that we need to think about the need for an increase in property tax transfer, and I know firsthand how sometimes what is provided isn't even enough. For example, the school budget does not fully fund purchasing books for the library, rugs for our classroom, field trips, iPads, laptops, cultural arts, all-school plays, community building events, salad bars, or even desks for our classroom. When I first joined the PTO board at Wakefield School, we ran programs on approximately $5,000 fundraised through our school community. This past year, the PTO had a budget again, entirely funded by our fundraising efforts, this year of approximately $20,000. I'm a busy mom of 4 young kids. I cannot, the PTO cannot, continue to make up the difference for the cuts being proposed. So now I come to you, the town council, the people who can help. To begin with, please know, members of the town council, that I am not blind to the timing of the communication from the superintendent and the school committee regarding cuts to kindergarten, first grade, school nurses, librarians, CARES, and technology, just to name a few. Clearly, it is no coincidence that they knew that this spring they would be looking to you for an increase in the tax transfer, and thus have created a situation of chaos and concern for parents who have children entering or enrolled in South Kingstown schools. They are, and we are, desperate. Speaking to this point, I am tonight promising to you, town council members, to continue to follow the school committee, actively advocate that the right thing be done by our students and by our teachers. If you vote to approve the 2% property tax transfer to the school committee and the district, I guarantee you that the aroused group of parents will continue to be involved to ensure that the money is appropriately allocated to meet the needs of all South Kingstown families. We need transparency as well as honest answers. If the town council does not increase the rate of transfer from the current 1.35% to the original 2% property tax transfer, we as a community are stuck. With the 2%, we can all work together to support our schools. Next, I am appalled about what is going on regarding the cuts being proposed at Wakefield School. I'm going to reiterate what I spoke to at the school committee last night. Without the 2% property tax transfer, it will make it extremely difficult for the school committee to rethink what I am begging them to rethink. And it will be impossible for them to prevent these cuts. For those of you not familiar, for those of you watching at home, the school was notified on Friday that next year there will only be one kindergarten class in one first grade. First grade will have 23 students in it, a combination of our two small kindergarten classes this year. That is the contractual maximum. This is unacceptable to me and many of my fellow community members for several reasons. Has anyone been in a kindergarten or a first grade class lately? Because I have. I volunteer through CARES weekly. 23 students may be contractually acceptable, but as first-time learners, that large number is certainly going to put our little guys at an educational disadvantage. Especially when we have enough top-notch teachers already in place at Wakefield School to continue to run 2 classrooms of each at numbers that would be much more appropriate for 5 and 6-year-olds. Creating situations where there are only one class of each grade poses many problems for our learners. First, one of the wonderful things about Wakefield Elementary is that there is a small student-to-teacher ratio. The large class sizes that will result from having only one class will leave teachers in a position where they may not be able to meet the varied needs of their learners. That is problem one. Secondly, one classroom filled to capacity means that there is absolutely no flexibility in terms of physical placement in space for students. That is problem number 2. Finally, there will be no room to consider a good teacher-student fit. Thinking about the teaching and learning styles, that's problem 3. In addition, families move to our town because of the school's excellent reputation. We don't want to change that, as that will certainly come at a much greater financial cost.
I'm going to have to ask you to... 2 minutes? Yeah, thank you.
My name is Andrea Spazianti, and I have children at Wakefield Elementary School and one going to Broad Rock next year. I'm going to finish what Emily started. In addition, families to move to our town because of the school's excellent reputation. We don't want to change that, as that will certainly come at a financial cost. It doesn't make sense to max out our kindergarten and our first grade classrooms, years where children are learning the foundations upon which their entire school and community experience will be based upon. We need you to rethink what you as members are considering as appropriate property tax transfers. Our schools also need the 2% increase from the property tax transfer to continue implementing a solid educational system where best academic practices are utilized. Without a 2% transfer, programs such as CARES will not be able to run, and our students will be affected. Family outreach and CARES are pertinent to our community, as without them, we're jeopardizing our students' emotional and educational futures. As previously mentioned, I also have volunteered with CARES for many years. As a classroom volunteer, my place in the classroom has moved from supplementary to absolutely necessary. I'm keeping children safe. I'm working one-on-one with those that need extra help, and I'm encouraging those at the top of the class to continue to succeed. There have been so many little children over the years who would have fallen through the cracks without the CARES volunteers. Children who have disclosed the most intimate personal stories of family tragedy, loss, emotional strife, and frustration. Stories that I must keep confidential, but I can assure you would stun you. Would these children, who would they confide in if they didn't have these volunteers? Or any school nurse? Or a lack of teacher assistance? Children who keep secrets are more apt to turn to drugs, alcohol, and crime. All of these positions that are on our line items up for cut with a 1.3 property tax transfer are those positions who support our young. In an era when we're in an opioid crisis, where 8 to 10-year-olds are stealing prescription medications from their parents' medicine cabinets, where children are home alone for the first time ever, we cannot afford the loss of the positions of people who are responsible for prevention. We have children entering our classrooms with undocumented needs, and the cost to meet these needs can now not be accounted for on a spreadsheet. Our children's education must be our community's priority, our top priority. Finally, it is unprecedented when the town manager supports an increase to meet the needs of the school that the town council does not agree or support. I beg you to contemplate these thoughts, which may lead to closing a kindergarten and first grade classroom at Wakefield School and placing programs like CARES in jeopardy. I believe it is short-sighted, inappropriate for our learners, and unfair to our teachers. I look forward to working together in a constructive manner to find creative alternative solutions that are educationally sound and fiscally responsible. A 2% increase is crucial. These cuts are not only putting our students at risk educationally, but these cuts will also pose a risk to the physical safety of our children, as well as the mental health of our community's population. To conclude, the school district's mission statement is that in partnership with families and the entire educational community, which includes you, is to educate all of our students in the knowledge and skills necessary to ensure readiness and success in college and career. Please help the school committee and us do just that.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Neely Donito. I live in town. I am a parent of a child at Wakefield Elementary School, and I have a daughter that will be entering kindergarten in 2 years. When I first started I'm also a teacher in the district. When I first started teaching, I was offered a job in South Kingstown and a job in North Kingstown. And I chose South Kingstown because of the community. It was a wonderful community, and I love teaching here. Sorry. I'm afraid for my children of what the community is saying to them, that they are not important, and that funding schools funds our community. And are we a community? Are we SK? What does that say about us that we can't fund our schools? We need to offer these programs that reach our most vulnerable students. And if we don't do that, you're going to be paying more on the back end later on. So are we going to encourage families to move here? That is why I bought my house. I paid a lot of money for my house, and I want it to be worth something when I eventually retire. So we have to think about our schools, the most important part of our community, and I think they are. Thank you.
Kathleen Gorman. I have 3 children, 50, 52, and 53 years old. I'm 25.
You don't look a day over 25.
You're right. They all graduated, went right through school in SK. They've all been very successful because they had a wonderful start in their education. I'm retired. I'm the proverbial on a fixed income. But I understand the value of education. We make choices. And the choice you need to make is the one in favor of today's children. That's the one I want you to make. My children are done. I don't have any stake, personally, in what happens now. But I know what we have an obligation to do to these children. Second point, I do have a background in education. I worked in an early intervention program for first graders for many years. Part of it was volunteering here after I graduated. After I retired. I understand how important those early years are, how important it is for those little ones to have close one-on-one contact with adults. And when you have large class sizes, especially without the support of an organization like CARES, the children don't get that one-on-one that they need. Today's kids are 7-second focus kids. They need people to help keep them on task. It's harder than it was with my kids. We deserve kids that are going to grow up and be prepared. Please.
Hi, my name is Susan Kimmerline. I've been living in South Kingstown since 1992. I've been a parent since 1993, and I've been teaching at the high school since 1990. And I feel like this is deja vu because I've been at this microphone that I'm actually afraid of speaking to. I get up in front of teenagers, but microphones, no thanks. I wanted to make a few remarks. One, thinking about the expenditures and who decides what's spent. I know we spend a lot of money on paper in our district, and I'll tell you, as an English teacher, I print up a lot of things that are in the public domain because in the back of my room I have a set of England and literature textbooks that are from 1986. So that's why some of that money is spent. I've heard the 2% increase of property tax described as reasonable, fair, doable. We aren't asking for budgetary support that one would describe as luxurious or generous. And we certainly don't feel we deserve a budget that would be described as harmful, detrimental, or it sounds like maybe even punitive. Why is it always a fight? In my nearly 27 years as a teacher in South Kingstown, it seems that we have always been asked to do more with less. Teachers are resourceful by nature, and at times I feel like the success we achieve as a district has been remarkable given the uphill and contentious battle, and has in fact been probably due to quite a lot of the resourcefulness of teachers and not due to a generous budget. And it's an uphill battle, and it so often seems to be. My husband teaches in Warwick, and we've been living this uphill battle of contentious issues between town councils, mayors, city councils, and school committees for the entire length of our careers. And it certainly isn't what I expected when I got into this business as a 22-year-old. And if I had seen that's what it was going to be, I really don't think I would have gotten into it. And honestly, I like to believe I've been a pretty successful teacher, and I have a lot of students I think would have said it was a shame that we didn't get to know each other. I would just ask the town council to consider the word compromise. Embedded in that word is the word promise. We as a community have a promise to keep to our children. A reasonable budget is only a part of that promise, but the rest of those promises cannot be kept with at least that much. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Larry Englander. I've lived in, moved to Rhode Island, and I've lived in South Kingstown for 45 years. I feel like a bit of an outlier here because I don't so much like children, but I greatly respect children as they grow up and I value their education enormously for a number of reasons. All three of my children benefited greatly from the choice of my wife and mine to live in South Kingstown because of the school district's reputation. And I still live here. Obviously, I don't have a child in school right now, and I'm probably not going to have one in the near future. Anyway, the children's education affects me as an old person because the EMT that's going to save my life, the education that they've received, the policeman that protects me and is an intelligent person and a knowledgeable person, the hospital workers, all the people around me, the town workers are astoundingly knowledgeable and nice and do the right things well in South Kingstown. I have to say that if someone started a program where I could go into a room and hand a dollar bill over onto the table and get $5 back, I think I would subscribe to that program. The last thing I'd like to say is I've been teaching at the University of Rhode Island for 45 years. I see a difference in the students that come into my classes from South Kingstown. I know them. They're local people, local young men and women. I see a difference, and I like that difference. And don't you throw it away. Do you understand?
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Abby Walsh. I'm here on behalf of my husband, James, and our 4 kids at home. My family and I moved to Vermont last summer, 1 week before the birth of our youngest child. We have 4 kids, ages 6.5 through now 8 months. Our son attends Wakefield Elementary. Our daughter attends Skip and will be entering kindergarten at Wakefield in the fall. Our experience at Wakefield Elementary has been phenomenal. Our son adjusted well to his new school, his first grade teacher, and his new classmates welcomed him with open arms. We are so impressed with the principal, the staff, the curriculum, the school community, the PTO, the school mission, and especially the small teacher-student ratio at the school. Our son came from a different school system in a different state with a different curriculum, and thankfully he didn't get lost in the crowd here. His first grade teacher, she's here, thank you, and math specialists were instrumental, thank you, Ms. Duff, they were instrumental in bringing him up to speed and in math, and now he's thriving in this subject area. Much to my dismay, I learned that the town in which we aim to settle, raise our family, and send our kids to school, Wakefield, will be making some huge and significant cuts to its staff. The decision must not be easy, but the ripple effects are enormous. We are worried about the morale of the teachers we have grown to love so much in such a little time, the impact on the families who have specifically settled in Wakefield for its school, location, and resources, and we are worried about the students who will get lost in the chaos that will ensue. We are currently renting in Wakefield, and our goal is to settle and purchase a property in this town because we love the school, the community resources, the families we've met, and we look forward to sending our 4 children through the school system here. However, these cuts are significant enough to give us pause as to whether or not we will settle here in this great town, because ultimately we want to plant our roots in a town that will invest in our children as much as we will invest in the town. Thank you for your time.
Hi, I'm Lily Schofield, and I go to Curtis Corner Middle School.
Hey, we've seen you before, haven't we?
Yeah, you can ask any of my teachers here. I'm not exactly quiet. I wasn't planning on speaking, but I was listening, and I was kind of scared that they were going to cut my favorite programs at my school, and I really do love my school, and I just hope that you vote yes on the 2%. Thank you.
Lily. Thank you, Lily.
Hi, my name is Stephen Licht. I'm a Wakefield resident. Apologize, I have a soft voice, but hopefully my message is a strong one. I have 2 children at Wakefield Elementary School, and I recognize that when I say that, and I also asked for a 2% transfer, what I'm really asking is for the rest of this community, all the taxpayers in this community, including myself, to pay to send my children to school. And I want to say that I recognize that means a commitment on my part, if I'm lucky enough to still be teaching at URI 40 years from now, to continue to support the schools as strongly as I do now for the children that come after mine. So with that, I will say, when it comes to the other commitment that implies too is to hold the school committee to account, is to ensure that as a taxpayer myself, when we do spend this money and we give it to you to spend, that we continue to come to the meetings, that we continue to engage, and make sure that you're spending it wisely. That said, when I speak to the town council, what I will tell you is that I'm a single issue voter when it comes to the town council, and that single issue is the schools, and will remain the schools for a very long time.
Hi, my name is Scott Kushner. I'm a recently arrived resident of Wakefield. I moved here about 18 months ago from Montreal, Canada. And my wife and I came down to join the faculty at the University of Rhode Island, seemingly like pretty much everybody else who's spoken before me tonight. I do want to start by thanking both the committee and the council. I know that these are difficult conversations and difficult decisions, and I know that everybody takes them very seriously. So thank you for all the late nights and the hard work that you've all done working through those differences and coming to, 2 positions at least for now. We chose South Kingstown, like a number of the other people who have spoken, in great measure because of the schools. We have a son who's in the wonderful dual language program at Peacedale Elementary School. We have a daughter who will follow either to Peacedale or to Wakefield in the next couple of years. And so to us, as to all of you and to many of the people who have spoken, the proper funding of education is really one of the top issues that brought us to South Kingstown and is keeping us here. We're academics, so we're kind of used to moving. We've moved 4 times in the last decade. And before I came over, my wife and I were talking, and we bought a house here, but we've bought and sold houses before, and we're looking to the town council to show the leadership that's been articulated, the leadership to invest in the future in the town, so that it doesn't simply become a beachside retirement community, but becomes one that is multi-generational, dynamic, healthy, and sustainable, both as a community and in a financial sense. So we're all really looking to you, to the group of people sitting at the top there, to make good decisions on behalf of all the residents of the town, we'll be looking to see how your deliberations continue, and good luck working through them.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Hi, excuse me. I'm Bob Traeger, Millbridge Road. Some of you know me. Some of you I haven't seen before. Originally, last meeting I came to, that was this, you have your 2 nights in a row. Last time I came, there were 3 people here. So I was kind of thrown off that I had to park at the church. But that being said, the first thing I was going to say was, I think it's unbelievable that we're only having a 20-cent tax increase. I mean, that comes out to like $75 for my family for the year, I believe. So I was going to say thank you and leave. Apparently, that may not be the case after tonight's meeting, but I don't know what the council is going to do. But what concerns me is our money being well spent? Last 15 years, the average inflation was 2.2%. Our school budget has gone up approximately that over the last 15 years. And that would be fine, I guess, under any circumstance. except that we've lost, as everyone knows, a huge number of students. So our per pupil spending has gone up, on average, 4.75% over the last 15 years. So 15 years ago, in the 01-02 year, we were spending $10,000 per student. We're spending double that now. So, I mean, what are the long-term goals? I mean, asking for $500K to $2 million every year to shore up what we have doesn't make sense to me. We're losing a lot of students. I feel as though the school committee and the town have to do something more than what you've been doing, because every year it seems like this is the same thing that's going on. You know, we don't have enough money. A bunch of people get up, ask for 1%, or, I mean, I can't believe we're talking about 2.2% or 0.3%. It's really not that much money, so to speak. But 5 years ago, the superintendent hired a group of people called NESDEC. I think it was 5 years ago. All right. Right after you took the job, I believe. And anyways, shortly after that, there was this whole thing about closing Wakefield Elementary. Well, a lot of people didn't like that idea, but at the time, it was proposed that that was going to save somewhere around $600,000 a year. That was then. Since then, next year's numbers, we're going to have about 400 students less than the year we were considering closing that school. That's more than almost double the kids that go to Wakefield School. And in the meantime, what have we done? We reopened South Road School. That one, I couldn't even get up and say anything about that because that one really just was beyond belief, in my opinion, why we would reopen that school. But anyway, about 3 years ago, there was a presentation about dual language learning. Now, I'm not going to, debate the educational value of dual language learning. I'm not totally on board with it. But at the time, the program was touted also as a way to attract more families to South Kingstown because we'd be doing something different than other towns. Well, I personally don't believe that it's the town's or the school department's job to try to attract families to the town to get more kids so you can get more funding. I mean, that's not part of what education is. You educate the kids you have. You don't try to attract more kids. And it's counterintuitive anyway, because by raising our taxes, you're making the homes more expensive. So young families are the least able to afford to buy a house in South Kingstown. I mean, if you look at the demographics that Steve put out, what's the percentage of people in town that are over 65 compared to 15 years ago? A lot more. And South Kingstown's not alone in that area, but, that ship has sailed. I mean, unless there's jobs here, young people with families aren't going to move here. The school system's important without a doubt, and I'm not saying anything negative about the South Kingstown school system. I'm just saying that $60 million for the number of kids we have and $20,000 per kid, I know there's ways that the administration can cut things other than benefits to kids. You could close a building, reorganize. There's other things you can do. I don't think you have to keep raising taxes. And I know I'm against the tide here, but somebody has to get up in front of all these people and give the numbers because we're not cheap with our kids. We are spending more, like Joe said, than all the comparable towns of our size. And I'm tired of hearing comparing us to Narragansett or Block Island or Rhode Island School of the Deaf. Those are special schools that have to spend a lot more money per student than we do. But on towns that are our peers, we spend a lot more than they do. And I think you just need to spend the money more effectively.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kathy Fogarty, and I teach at South Kingstown High School. I'm also the NEASK Vice President. I'm coming to, thought I was going to come and speak on one thing, but I do want to clarify a few other things from the previous speaker. But I think that the 2% budget that was put, I personally would have asked for more. I know that sounds a little self-serving. However, I think that due to, it's not just the declining enrollment that's causing the issues that we are having here in South Kingstown. They're compounded by that. Not only do we have the decrease in the funding, but the mandates coming from the Rhode Island Department of Education continue to increase the costs for our school districts. And I think that's getting lost in here. When I came to teach here 23 years ago, I was, young, excited that I was in this great, well-performing school district, and that's something that's been maintained over those 23 years, and I want to make sure that's something that can continue for our students. I do live in the neighboring town of Narragansett. It was just the fact that I didn't know that I wanted to teach in the same school district as my students, or my children were going to be in. I didn't think that would be the best fit for us. However, I'm proud to be here as a South Kingstown teacher, and I proudly wear my blue South Kingstown all the time at Narragansett events, much to my kids' dismay. My concern is that the difference between the 2% and the 1.35 seems to be more of a political issue, really, and about a lack of the town council's ability to have say in what the school department does with their budget. The only people that you are hurting are the students and the staff that work with those students. And if you want to continue to have a quality education system, you cannot do it on the backs of the students and the teachers. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nicole Malanafi. I'm in the Matunic School District. I have a little kindergartner, and then I also have one that's at Skip right now. So I am a young family that has chosen to move to South Kingstown. I'm not originally from Rhode Island. My husband is, and we decided to move to South Kingstown because of the schools. There's discussions about why do we need to be investing more into the schools. Well, we have lost more than any other district in 1 year. We're also losing federal funding. And as technology improves, we need to continue to improve our schools, and that costs money. The equipment, the facilities, the books, they're out of date and they're old, and we need to be investing and improving it. Again, we chose here because of the schools, because they were the best in the states. And I would like to continue having my kids in this district because of that. And so, I also would have asked for more than 2%, because even at 2%, there's significant cuts that are being made. And it concerns me with my child being in kindergarten, and then another year's time, I'll have another kindergartner entering. And there's discussions about limiting the number of kindergarten teachers at Matunic, and then at first grade level, and then having the class sizes get larger. Just in this year, my daughter started with 15 kids, and now she's grown 3 throughout the year, and they're at 18. And I can't imagine if they're at 23. That's a lot of kids in a class trying to learn. I have a lot of friends in different districts and listening to what their kindergartners are learning. And South Kingstown goes beyond educating our kids. My daughter is reading above any of her friends. She's learning math. It blows my mind, the things that they're doing now. It's comparable to a first or second grader. And I think that has a lot to say for our teachers and the investment that has been made. And I think we need to continue to make that investment. Thank you.
Hi, I'm a South Kingstown parent, and
would you please state your name?
Brooke Conley. And I'd like to point out that I think there were over 200 people who signed a petition that was brought to you for a 2% increase. And I can tell you there are a lot more people that think it should be 4%, which is the most allowable. I am one of those people. I disagree with the overall decision of the committee to just ask for 2%. I don't think it's the school committee's job to think about anybody else but the kids. That's why I elect the school committee. The town council can balance the needs of everyone. Sure, think about that. The school committee, it's about the kids, so tell me what they need. I think everybody's had some good points to make. Some points I've not agreed with at all. Some points I have. But this isn't the time to have this isn't the time to make your point. You need to fund the schools and then get to work on what the problems are with the budget. There are problems with the budget. Everybody, has pointed them out. But we need to protect our kids first and then get to work on some of these problems that are systemic. And what happens is when you just have the discussion here now at budget time and then forget about it and then don't get to work solving the systemic problems like the increase in health care, like the increase in mandates, like the monopoly of the bus company, I think. These are systemic problems that we need to fix, and what are you guys doing to fix those things? Instead, we're just talking about making cuts, and if you think just the cuts at 2% hurt vulnerable kids, the cuts at 4%, when you don't do it at 4%, hurt them more. So I just wanted to say, please fund the budget at 4% and protect our kids. I'd like to know that South Kingstown is a town that protects our kids, and then we're adults and we get to business fixing our problems. But we don't sacrifice our kids to do it. Lots of communities are having discussions like this. We're not the only ones. Let's be the only ones that always put our kids first.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Chris Hubbard, and I live in Wakefield. My wife and I are the parents of 3 kids, ages 5, 3, and 1. We had 3 under 5, yes. With our oldest, a kindergartner, in the DOI program. So we plan to use the SK school system for a very long time to come, we hope. We moved to Wakefield for the school system. I want to start with what I witnessed last night at the school committee meeting because it speaks volumes about the amazing community that we live in. A group of understandably upset parents from Matunic was there to voice concern over the way the situation was being handled. Many of them have become very dear friends of mine, and I agree with them. In this instance, they were treated very unfairly. A number of us were there to make sure that the DOI program was not scapegoated, and for the most part, it was not. In fact, a number of those Matunic parents spoke out in support of the DOI program, and one gentleman from Wakefield expressed his admiration for and support of the DOI program, even though his child did not get a slot in the lottery. He then went on to remind all of us, as the room was getting heated, that we are all parents of SK kids and all in this together. The round of applause and the unanimous agreement in that room was overwhelming. He's right. That's the only reason we are here now, to do what is right for our kids, educationally, with a fair and just portion of this community's money. Last night, the school committee listened, owned up to mistakes, misunderstandings, and miscommunications. They asked for additional input, promised greater clarity in policy, and transparency in their decisions and recommendations. We must hold them to those promises and help them in their decision making. We must also hold school administration, town council, and town management to the same standards. There's plenty of blame to go around. The state funding formulas, pension obligations, rising expenses on less than full school buildings, the growth plan done in the 90s that, in some people's opinions, turned it into more of a retirement community than a growing school community. Be that as may, here we are. We do face some very hard decisions that you folks have to make, and I don't envy you for having to make those decisions at all. But we have some amazing schools with awesome teachers. We have a community full of parents who are involved and willing to help. Programs like DLI and CARES, properly implemented, managed, and expanded, will draw families to our community and get our enrollment back up. We have a school committee and a town council that truly care. As I've gotten to know a lot of you individually, I absolutely know that for a fact. I just urge everyone involved to recognize that mistakes have been made and work together to solve our challenges. Put together a plan that cuts out wasted money, but not well-spent money, especially for the less fortunate families. Fund the current budget to a level that stabilizes this situation, not drives it into a tailspin. But demand results for doing so. Keep and expand programs that will give our kids a competitive edge and attract families to our community. Be creative and forward-thinking. Don't think about just this year. How are we going to do something now to fix next year and the following year and 10 years issues? If you must make cuts and consolidations, do it in a manner that gives the affected families the time and support they deserve, even if it costs us all a little more. But please, don't put our kids' education in jeopardy or ruin our school system for the sake of politics. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Ray LeBlanc. I've been a South Kingstown resident. My wife and I have been residents here for about 5.5 years. Fast forward to last week, do the math, we have a child entering kindergarten that we tried to register. And when my wife went to register our child for kindergarten, the principal of the school came out to meet with her, and she thought, this is so great, this is why we're in South Kingstown. I'm registering my child for kindergarten, and the principal's taking the time to meet with me. And unfortunately, there was no good news to be shared. She heard terms like lottery, busing across town to another school. The options were lucky enough to go to the school in the district that we actually live in, which is a pretty baseline expectation of any resident. That class would be huge, and if not, it would be another huge class on the other side of town. We have a 3-year-old. Will they go to the same school? I don't know if these are answers anybody, and I don't know if these are questions anybody can answer affirmatively right now. That's scary. We moved to South Kingstown for the schools. It was a major contributing factor. The neighborhood we live in, we live there due to where we thought our children were going to go to school. We come from a very modest background, and we pinch ourselves every day looking at where we live and the community we live in. We feel like we made it, you know, and it's a big letdown. You know, it's enough anxiety just putting your kid on a bus for the first time and saying goodbye to him. And we were told we may not know where our little guy will go to school in September until August. It's scary and unfair. Like I said, I feel it's a baseline expectation that your child go to the school in the district that you live in. It's a standard that we expect South Kingstown to meet and or exceed. With that said, I don't know what scares me more, is that the fact that my boy will have to be bused to the other side of town to sit in a very large class, or what is the alternative to that? I respect the tough decisions this group has to make. This is my first time ever going to a meeting like this. Never been involved in local government in any way, shape, or form, and I was completely ignorant to the issues at hand until this week. I will no longer be silent. I will no longer just let decisions fall out in front of me, and you know, I will participate. I want to take part. You know, if the 2% allows our kindergarten and first graders to not be in massive class sizes, I don't understand what the debate is. It doesn't seem like much of a debate to me. With that said, I respect the tough decisions this group has to make, and I hope to be a part of them in the future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Markey. I live in Wakefield. I have a son at Broad Rock, came up through Wakefield Elementary, and then in a year and a half, I'll have a son who will be a kindergartner at Wakefield. I just wanted to take a moment of reflection here, right? If we just think about the numbers in this room, the numbers of people who spoke today, who have these compelling, heart-wrenching stories about what the school budget means to them, the voters, the people in this room support funding the schools, bottom line. So I hope the town council really hears that 2% is reasonable, that there are those of us who think that 4% makes more sense, but bottom line is the numbers, the voters, the people support fully funding SK schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tia Beckman. I've advocated for those with dyslexia for years. I had the honors of being on the Closing the Gap committee, and that was great. I would like to ensure that there's enough money in a budget and outlines that enables the school system to develop a holistic program for those with learning disabilities, and my pet one, language-based learning disabilities. Something like dyslexia does not just affect reading. The school system has been doing a lot of work with reading and dyslexia. I would like to see it much more comprehensive. I would like to see how dyslexia affects language and how language affects school. Being able to understand classroom lectures, being able to tell time, being able to use the analog clock and the digital clock, and having them make sense. In math, being able to have percentages or fractions like quarter of. What does 1/4 mean in math? What does quarter of mean in time? How can a child, if they don't understand language, be able to use a planner? Speech pathologists are very familiar with dyslexia and how language affects daily life. In occupational therapy, I was trained as an occupational therapist. We did not learn about it in school. I propose that our occupational therapists get sent to schools for that. Landmark School, Landmark College, for the summer education extra CEUs. I propose that there be a coordinated group, sorry, I'm talking too close, I guess, coordinated group between teachers, therapists, speech, and occupational mostly, because they have the sensory system too, to coordinate together. In the GAP group, we learned that you don't get the scores going up on testing because you're always going to have kids going on to special ed programs and coming off. I propose that there be a study in determining what makes a successful program for those with language-based learning disabilities. You know, what are the criteria? This takes money. I hope that you support special ed and provide the money. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move on, I know there might be some more comments. I'm Meg Healy. I am your town council president. And I want to let you know I don't have children in the school system anymore, but both of my children did go through the school system. And I listened to the teacher from the high school, the English teacher who had both of my children. And your influence was awesome with my daughter. She's now a very successful English teacher herself. So that I appreciate. But that's not the point I want to make here. I am fully supporting the 2% increase, and I'm going to ask everybody at the council table who was wavering before to reconsider and support our children, support our teachers, and support our community. Do we have any more comments from the audience? Any more comments from the school committee? Please come forward and state your name.
My name is Brian Levine, and I live in Wakefield. We have a daughter who's in first grade at Wakefield Elementary, and it's a great school. We love it. Great teachers, great principal. The community there is amazing. Everybody couldn't be better. I also have worked at the YMCA. I've been camp counselor to all these kids from Wakefield, Peacedale, Matunic, Narragansett, and I worked with all of them. And they need these programs. It makes a difference. It really does. This money you're talking about is chump change, what you're scribbling about. The little bit of money that you could be giving to these kids speaks volumes to what you will get out of them in the future. I see it. I've worked with them since when they were 5. I see them now when they're 7, turning 8. And it's these programs. It's the one-on-one. It's the volunteering. It's the mentoring. It's the, the help that they get from an adult up here. It really, really, really makes a difference. And I look up here, and all of you claim to be on board. You all say the right thing. You all say, you're all for the schools. Well, put your money where your mouth is. Do the right thing and make it happen. It's the right thing to do.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Laura Roebuck, and I had no intentions on speaking last night. As the school committee did hear last night, my over 2-minute speech. But I do want to be on record saying that any Matunic family that is registering for kindergarten that has been told there's not a guaranteed spot for you, and this is also on record, you can email me at lauralandry@hotmail.com because I will support you. I did get a text this morning from a family who was originally told they moved here from Utah. So we're talking about low enrollment. Matunic has the highest enrollment of the 4 elementary schools this year. There's other programs in this community that are allocating new residents. However, Matunic is drawing new families that are not going to other programs. This mother from Utah said, Laura, I got a call from the principal that my son is guaranteed a spot, and I did confirm with the principal, who is in charge of kindergarten screening, because that got revamped this year, that yes, her son is guaranteed that first classroom in Matunic. And this is my response to her. And I speak on behalf of a Wakefield parent, a Peacedale parent, and a West Kingston parent. I said, no, I did not get that call. But to be honest with you, I'm very excited for you. Being new to the community, I want you to know that the Matunic families, and I truly believe I speak on all of the elementary schools, we 100% support each other. And we are honored to have you as part of this group. I promise to tell you going forward, your experience within this school district will be nothing like your first experience. I am really, really, genuinely happy for you. To be honest, I think we're going to be fine. I think we're going to be fine. But it's the principle of all of this that is disgusting. And last night, my closing remarks, our elementary school is a thriving, vibrant learning community. Why mess it up with fear tactics? This is totally unnecessary and unprofessional. These actions are not worthy of the strong tradition of families supporting all our South Kingstown schools. And mine at my dear heart that my incoming kindergartner does not have that spot next year of Matunic. Thank you.
Any further comments from the audience? From the school committee? Here at the table?
So what I wanted to say is that I was never against the 2%, even though it might seem like that from the community or from the school committee. What I do want to make sure is that our money is well spent, and for that reason, if we don't spend our money well or wisely, there's a child, there's a teacher, it could be 1 or 2 people that we're not helping. Because if you throw your money away, it's not going towards that person or that child or that teacher, that janitor. So, like I said, I am in support of the 2%, but I am so happy to see that there's a lot of parents that are becoming more involved in our school system to help keep everyone accountable, to make sure that money is well spent so that we make sure that our community is affordable. And right now, it's very difficult for people to move into our town, which is contributing to the fact of our low enrollment. Now, there's also the fact that there's lower birth rates. I understand that. But we need to make sure that our town remains affordable. We don't want to turn into Narragansett where you only have pockets of communities where people can afford to live. Thank you.
Thanks. So I've always supported the 2% transfer. I'd be happy to entertain 4%, which will come before us in a couple weeks when we do have to finally approve the budget. So I hope to see some of your faces on that night in a couple weeks. You know, I think I'm inspired and really admire the movement that's starting here. Starting a petition to get us to consider a property tax transfer is really amazing to watch, and your testimony was very compelling. So it sounds like you're going to get the 2% that you want, come in a couple weeks and push for more.
I also want to thank everybody who has come out tonight. Your passion speaks volumes. It truthfully does. You care about the community, you care about the teachers, and most importantly, you care about the children in our town. And it is our responsibility to respect your wishes as our constituents, because you are all voters too. And I want to do the right thing, and I'm sure the council wants to do the right thing. And most importantly, we want to protect the children, and we want to make sure that they have the means to have successful educations. And I thank you for coming out. It truly is inspirational to me. Thank you.
I can't agree more that it's so inspiring to see everybody here. You know, I look out and I see my first grade teacher, I see my English teacher, one of my science teachers, my first gym teacher. It's really something to look out there and see that. And I don't know how anybody cannot feel compelled when you see, you know, the faces of your childhood staring back at you, telling you, this is what I want from you. It's certainly a lot of emotion and a lot of very passionate people and topics here tonight. I did want to clarify one thing, though. I didn't know about the kindergarten classes going down to one size until this weekend when I started getting phone calls from people. So that certainly wasn't something I think any of us were on the know about earlier. We didn't know. We still don't know, as the superintendent indicated last night, what's going to happen. Kindergarten enrollment changes, and I hope to see some of those numbers to go up, and some of the parents can have some reassurance that their child's going to have a spot in the school that they need to. But I just want to thank everybody. We're going to have another meeting tomorrow night, and I'm sure we're going to hear from even more people. Again, we're not voting on the final budget for a few weeks, so this is all an important part of the discussion, and I can't say enough how inspiring it is to look out there and see some of you. And I think keeping the checks and balances in place, part of our job here is to challenge leadership, to not take every staff member at their word, to push back, to ask questions. But it's also on the community to hold people accountable and to stay involved and not just show up a few days before a budget session or when things get really tough, but to constantly hold people accountable and push back and say, you know what, you said you were going to do this, and I'm going to make sure you follow through with it. So I'm counting on some of these people I've seen tonight to see them throughout the year engaged, and I'm going to call you, and you're going to hate me, but I'm going to call you and bring you to these meetings, because I think that's just as important as us keeping people in check. We need you guys to do that too. So thank you so much.
Do we have any further discussion?
I'll just make a couple of comments. Sure. All right. So this is democracy, right? I still feel very strongly about my position. However, I've learned from early on as a counselor, this is a numbers game. When you get to 3, you win. And I applaud you, and I congratulate you for all coming out and speaking tonight. You want a balanced council. You want people who are going to represent a balanced council that will represent everyone in town, including the children. So, again, thank you for coming out, and I congratulate you.
If there is no further discussion, I don't think we have to have a meeting to close the public hearing.
I just want to add one more thing really quick. I think one thing that's really important is to understand that the council, our job is to approve the budget of the school committee, not to tell them how to spend it. As parents, as teachers, as people in our community, you need to make sure that your voices are heard so that we can keep our checks and balances in place as to where the money goes.
Well, I thank you. I thank everybody for coming out. We will be meeting again tomorrow at 7 o'clock for those people who want to attend. At this time, the meeting is adjourned. Do you think there was going to be this many people? Well, I thought we might have, and then
interviewing for. I have somebody showing up tomorrow for a final round of interviews, and at the university it's up to 6. This is the second round. In the first round we met 5 people. Second round, even though he'll be on my team. So, I mean, so tomorrow he'll meet one more people.
Thank you, guys.